The Legend of Sleepy Hollow by Washington Irving. Welcome to a tale of mystery, ghosts, and a village trapped in time. This is the legend of Sleepy Hollow, Washington Irving's haunting story of a headless horseman, a strange schoolteacher, and the dark woods where they meet. Let's dive into this chilling tale. Our story begins in the quiet, mysterious village of Sleepy Hollow. It's a small town near the Tappan Zee River in New York, surrounded by thick, dark woods. The village is peaceful, but there's something strange about it. The people of Sleepy Hollow speak of ghosts that haunt the night, and the air always seems filled with a quiet unease. The most famous of these legends is the Headless Horseman, a ghostly figure believed to be the spirit of a soldier who lost his head in battle. They say he rides through the night on a black horse, searching for his missing head and scaring anyone who dares to cross his path. One day, a new schoolteacher arrived in Sleepy Hollow. His name was Ichabod Crane. Ichabod was a strange-looking man, tall and thin, with long, gangly arms and legs. His head seemed a little too small for his body, and he had large, pointed ears that stuck out. He wasn't what you'd call handsome, but he was smart and very interested in strange tales and legends, especially ghost stories. Ichabod quickly made himself at home in Sleepy Hollow. He became the schoolmaster, teaching the village children reading, writing, and arithmetic. But he also liked to tell them stories, particularly stories about ghosts and witches. The children would sit wide-eyed as Ichabod spoke of spirits that haunted the woods and the mysterious Headless Horseman. "Remember, children," Ichabod would say, pacing around the room, "the woods are dark and full of mysteries. Stay close to home after nightfall, or you might meet the Headless Horseman." The children gasped in fright, their eyes darting toward the windows. One of the boys, barely whispering, asked, "Is he real, Mr. Crane?" Ichabod gave a serious nod. "Oh yes, very real. So, mind your steps when you walk home tonight." Aside from his love of teaching, Ichabod had another passion: food. Sleepy Hollow was full of kind families who often invited him for dinners, and Ichabod never missed a chance to fill his belly. He was known for having an enormous appetite, despite being so skinny. On one of his walks through the village, he passed a bakery, the smell of fresh bread in the air. Fresh bread?" he said to himself, smiling. "I could stop in just for a taste." He left the bakery soon after, munching happily on a loaf of bread. As the days went by, he became well liked by the villagers for his politeness, though they sometimes chuckled at his odd ways. Still, Ichabod had a bigger dream in Sleepy Hollow, one that went beyond food and ghost stories. He had fallen in love with the beautiful Katrina Van Tassel. Katrina was the daughter of the richest farmer in Sleepy Hollow, Baltus Van Tassel. She was young, with golden curls and bright eyes that sparkled like the morning sun. She wore dresses of fine fabric and always carried herself with grace. Ichabod was completely captivated by her beauty and charm. But it wasn't just her looks that caught his attention. Katrina would one day inherit her father's vast fortune, and Ichabod dreamed of marrying her and living a life of wealth and comfort. One afternoon, as Ichabod watched Katrina from a distance, he sighed and muttered to himself, "To win the heart of such a lovely woman, and her wealth, that would be my greatest achievement." But Ichabod wasn't the only one with his eyes set on Katrina. There was another man who wanted her hand in marriage, Brom Bones. Brom was the complete opposite of Ichabod. He was strong, handsome, and loved by everyone in the village. He was a skilled horseman and always the first to join in any challenge or prank. Brom had dark hair, a sharp jaw, and a big booming laugh. He also enjoyed playing tricks, especially on poor Ichabod. One day, as Brom saw Ichabod watching Katrina from afar, he narrowed his eyes and smirked. "That skinny schoolteacher thinks he can win her," Brom muttered under his breath. "We'll see about that." Brom loved a good rivalry, and he wasn't afraid to show Ichabod that Katrina was out of his reach. He'd often play pranks on Ichabod, knocking on his door late at night, or leaving strange, spooky things near his home. Brom's friends laughed at his tricks, and Brom took every chance to make Ichabod feel like an outsider. Despite Brom's efforts, Ichabod didn't give up. One evening, Ichabod received an invitation to a grand party at the Van Tassel's home. The Van Tassel farm was beautifully lit with candles, and the smell of roasted meats and pies filled the air. Ichabod arrived wearing his best, though somewhat shabby, suit, and made his way inside. The house was full of people dancing and laughing, and the music was lively. Ichabod danced with Katrina, though his awkward movements made her giggle. "Mr. Crane," she said with a teasing smile, "your steps are as unique as your stories." Ichabod blushed, his heart fluttering. "You are the finest dancer in all of Sleepy Hollow, Miss Van Tassel." As the night went on, the guests gathered around a large fire to share ghost stories. Brom Bones, who had been watching Ichabod closely all night, stood up and began telling a tale of the Headless Horseman. The fire crackled as Brom leaned in, his voice deep and serious. "I once had a run-in with the Headless Horseman," Brom began. The guests leaned closer, eager to hear more. "I was riding through the woods late one night, and there he was, charging straight at me on his horse, headless, his sword drawn." The crowd gasped. "But I was faster," Brom continued, grinning. "I raced him all the way to the bridge near the church, and as soon as I crossed it, he disappeared, vanished into thin air." Ichabod's face turned pale. He tried to laugh it off, but his voice was shaky. "That's just a story, right?" Brom gave him a sly smile. "Oh, it's very real, schoolmaster. You'll see one night." Later that night, Ichabod rode home on his old horse, Gunpowder. The woods were dark and silent, the only sound being the rustling of the leaves in the wind. The moon hung low in the sky, casting eerie shadows on the path. Ichabod couldn't shake the stories from the party. Every sound made him jump. Every shadow seemed to move. His imagination ran wild as he rode deeper into the forest. Suddenly, Ichabod heard a strange noise behind him, the sound of galloping hooves. His heart pounded in his chest. He turned around, and there it was, a dark figure on a horse, its rider, headless. The figure charged toward Ichabod, holding a sword high in the air. Terrified, Ichabod kicked Gunpowder into a frantic gallop. They raced through the woods, branches snapping and leaves flying. Ichabod's eyes were wide with fear, the Headless Horseman close behind. His only hope was to reach the bridge near the church, the same bridge Brom had mentioned. If he could cross it, maybe the ghost would disappear. Ichabod rode as fast as he could, the wind whipping at his face. The bridge was just ahead. He urged Gunpowder forward, his heart racing. They made it across the bridge, and Ichabod dared to look back. But the Headless Horseman was gone. There was no sign of him anywhere. The next morning, the people of Sleepy Hollow found Ichabod's horse, Gunpowder, grazing near the bridge. But Ichabod was nowhere to be found. His hat was discovered lying on the road, and next to it, a shattered pumpkin. Some say he was spirited away by the Headless Horseman, while others believe he fled Sleepy Hollow in fear. As for Brom Bones, he married Katrina not long after Ichabod's disappearance, and whenever the story of Ichabod Crane and the Headless Horseman was told, Brom would smile as if he knew more than he let on. To this day, the legend of Sleepy Hollow lives on. Some believe that on dark, misty nights, the Headless Horseman still rides through the woods, searching for his lost head.
If you enjoyed the tale, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more exciting tales. See you next time.